All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Talking Away the Taboo. I'm Amy Barron. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Rabbi Yosef Shapiro, who is the author of a brand new infertility book for the Jewish community. He comes to this work and because of his own fertility story, and I just absolutely can't wait to interview him. So, Rabbi Shapiro, please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. So yes, I am Yosef Shapiro. I grew up in Baltimore and eventually made my way to Atlanta, Georgia, where I live now. My wife and I live in a suburb of Atlanta, and we do kiruv. We have a congregation here, a shul, whatever you'd call it, in a suburb called Brookhaven. And we absolutely love it, living in the middle of our own little community. And we've been here for about 6 years and watched it grow from nobody to several hundred constituents.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's been a beautiful journey.
Okay, that's a totally different conversation, which we're not going to have tonight, although I'm fascinated. And so we're going to have to talk offline about that. But, look, we're here tonight because you and your wife went through this journey to have your family and felt alone and isolated. So talk to us about that experience.
Yeah, so I'll take you back a few years. When we first started, we got married about, I guess, close to 9 years ago. And we just assumed, like many couples do, that it would be easy. We'd have children when we wanted, and it would all be wonderful. And we actually had our first child in a way that seemed easy. And then shortly after that, we were trying to have more children, and we began to realize that it doesn't always go as smoothly as we'd like. And at this time, we were living in Israel. At the time, I was doing smicha, and we were living in Israel, in Yerushalayim, and we started this process. And in Israel, there was a lot of frustration because on the one hand, it's a socialized medical system. So yes, it's getting paid for. And we didn't realize at the time how expensive this journey can be, and did eventually become in Atlanta. But at the time, it was free. In Israel, we weren't charged for anything. But because of that, the system just dragged its feet. And while we were sitting there sort of watching as all our friends started having their second or even their third child, we're sitting there and all they want to do is very minimal things. And maybe we'll test one thing here, and maybe this month we'll tweak a little bit, and maybe we'll give you some Clomid, and maybe we'll change the dosage. I say we, but really it was my wife, Rookie, was the one taking a few pills of Clomid each month in different dosages, and it did not work for us. So at that point, we left Israel because we were moving to Atlanta, to Brookhaven, to start this role in this community here. And that's when we learned about the complex financial piece of this struggle, which is just so difficult, adding an extra layer of difficulty to an already consuming difficult struggle.
Totally. So I'm just going to stop you for a second and ask you, when you were in the midst of all of this and everything that was going on, and the wanting to move forward and being stymied by, the Israeli, their health system of the socialized medicine, and not wanting to do as much as possible because, obviously that's the way their system works. I mean, and you're talking, and you just mentioned seeing other people having their second kids and having their third kids. How did you guys manage that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I actually sometimes wonder that. How did we manage? Because yes, you're right. It's so difficult seeing something that everyone else seems to be having it easy. And we all know, any of us who've been on that journey know that we don't notice the people in our life who are struggling like we are. And instead, we just see the people who are succeeding in that area, which is so far from us. And yes, it's so incredibly isolating. And at the same time, it just adds another layer of feeling like there's nothing I can do.
And the aloneness of, the health system is not looking out for you, and they're not helping, and the community is off in a different plane and not, is sort of helping because they're adding to the stress and the loneliness. So absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay.
and keep in mind, it happens to be we're both from America, so we had no family there, and yes, it was a very difficult part of our journey, but it was only the beginning.
Okay, so now continue. So you land back in America. You're
Yeah, so we land in America, and we very quickly learned that there's going to be a major shift in how this is going to continue. Number one, the doctors are actually going to do what they need to do quickly or efficiently, I guess I would say. Now, obviously, nothing in this process is quick, as we all know, but efficiently to actually start the process moving in the direction of IVF. Obviously, at that time, hoping we would not need it, but that comes with a lot of bills. Someone's got to pay for it. So we started, the first step in this journey was obviously we had to pick a clinic. It wasn't like Israel where you sort of just get plugged into the healthcare system. They just hand you to whoever you're handed to, and you're lucky if you get to ask a question. But instead, we now have to make a big choice. And I always stress this to congregants who approach me that are going through IVF or something like that. I actually just had a congregant come to me a few days ago looking for advice. I always say that one of the most overlooked decisions that is so crucial is where you find the clinic. Because when you start the journey, we like to be optimistic, hopefully, and think, okay, I'll have to go 2-3 times, maybe 4 or 5 times. So I'll find the one that's whatever, cheapest, nicest, whatever it is. And we forget that when you actually have to do IVF, if one gets to that point, it takes over your life. And you could be going, I still remember Rookie went at least once a day for probably 2 weeks. And some days, at least one day, if not 2, that I can remember, she went more than once.
Right.
And when you pick a clinic that is nice, or you like the doctor, but it's an hour away, and I know in a lot of areas you don't have a choice, it adds so much extra stress. So we were looking at only the 2 clinics that were nearby. We happen to live in an area of Atlanta called Pill Hill. So as you can guess from the name, a lot of medical facilities. And there are 2 facilities near us. One is called Shady Grove Atlanta, which is a very famous network around America, Shady Grove. And one is a local one called Reproductive Biology Associates, RBA. And we had heard amazing things about RBA. We had not heard really anything about Shady Grove, which at that time was actually known by a different name, GRS. But anyways, we called RBA because online it showed, this was in November, I think. Online it showed the next appointment was in March or April, way out.
Oh gosh.
So called them up and we're like, we just moved here and we really want to start this process. We've been trying already for close to a year. And they said, I'm sorry, there's nothing you could do. That's the system. So I said, can I at least talk to the doctor? Because we wanted to speak to the doctor, number one, to get a feel for them, but also we wanted to share that we actually wanted to have multiples. And we wanted to hear how comfortable they were with that. And they said, I'm sorry, our doctor does not make for personal calls. You'll have to wait till your consult in April, and then you can talk to the doctor then. So, okay, we made the appointment for April, and we were obviously hoping we would find something sooner. And we call the other clinic, this GRS, Shady Grove. And we say, can we make an appointment? They say, yeah, we have appointments available as soon as next week. So I said, great, can I talk to the doctors? Anyway, he can call me. And they said, sure, he'll call you. And I figured after being used to 10 months of frustratingly slow process, we figured there's no way this guy's actually going to call us. But to his credit, it was amazing. He actually called us later that day. And I spoke to him, I told him a little bit about our story. Our story is a little bit unique only statistically in that it's unexplained. Neither of us have any issue, thank God. Although it's funny, I say in the book that sometimes I wonder if it would be better to know we had an issue that could be corrected.
Right. This is a very common thing that we hear. And frankly, I also dealt with unexplained infertility as well. I mean, and I felt many of these emotions also, but I hear this so frequently, this idea that like, if only we had a problem, then we could try to solve it. Now, of course, we know, I mean, and speaking as a medical professional myself, we know that just because you identify a problem doesn't necessarily mean we have the ability to solve it. But this concept, this psychological concept of this unknown is so it really plays with your emotions in a way that, it's just so non-concrete that you don't know how to think about it and where to hold it. So it kind of feels like you're just shooting in the dark and trying, but you have no idea if there's ever going to be an end point. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah. So that was our I guess what Hashem gave us. That was our lot that we had. But anyways,
I want you to continue with this, but we have to come back at some point to the throwaway comment you made about we wanted to have multiples, but I want you to finish about this
oh, definitely, we'll get back to that.
Yeah.
So anyways, so this doctor calls me. I discussed a little bit of what our the fact that it was unexplained and what we had been through, what testing. And he said, okay, it sounds like you're going to be a couple that will try a few things for a little bit. And then if that doesn't work, we're going to go to IVF within a few months. So I said to him, I said, okay, I just want to make you aware. I know some couples or many couples are afraid of having multiples. We would actually want to have multiples. Would you be willing to help us have multiples? Would you be willing to put in more than one embryo? So he says to me, how old is your wife? I think at the time she was 23, 24, something like that. So I told him she's 23, 24, and he laughed at me. And he said, you think that we're going to put 2 embryos into a woman in her 20s? He said, if you want to use our clinic, you're not having twins. If you want twins, find another clinic. And this is what he says to me. And I said, okay. Like, I asked him a little bit about why. He shared a little bit about what his concerns were and what the reasons would be why he wouldn't want to put in multiples. And I told him, I said, listen, we're even willing to sign waivers or do anything that we need to do to allow this to happen.
Okay, so I need to ask you, why did you have this deep-seated desire? Why did the two of you have the desire to have multiples?
Yeah, so it's a combination of we love children and we had been yearning for them for so many years. So we figured if we want to have a large family and we have one after, I guess at that time it had been 3 or 4 years, then if we can have twins, that would be amazing. We get to have 2 more children with 1 pregnancy.
Right. I totally get it. Okay. So bring us to the point. I'm guessing, I mean, maybe I shouldn't guess, but I'm guessing you ended up using this clinic regardless.
Well, so anyway, so yes, I called my rabbi in Israel, Rabbi Yosef Shapiro, and I told him, I said that we had found this doctor and we have 2 options. We have this April option. We can wait for that doctor, see what he says, or we can go ahead with this doctor. And he said very wisely, he said that, listen, he said, go ahead with this doctor. If you end up becoming pregnant with 1, you're not going to be upset. And if it doesn't work by April time, then you can talk to the other doctor. So that's what we did. So we kept our April appointment. We started the process with this doctor at Shady Grove, Atlanta, who was only going to put 1 in because if we wanted twins, we should find another clinic. So anyways, we began the journey, which was obviously a very painful journey, full of ups and downs, very, very stressful. Obviously, all the times we thought would go smoothly, didn't go smoothly. The different things that come up when we would have hoped they wouldn't come up. We had a failed transfer, which was obviously incredibly difficult. But eventually, after all this journey, this pain, the struggling we went through, eventually it was time for a second transfer. And sure enough, Dr. Perlow puts in the 1 embryo, true to his word, and we're hopeful that it's going to become pregnant. And Baruch Hashem, a few weeks later, actually, it was pretty quick. It's a few days later, we get the results that, thank God, we're pregnant. And he says, come back in, I think it was 6 weeks, so that we can do the first ultrasound to make sure there's a heartbeat. And sure enough, 6 weeks later, Rookie went back for the appointment. And it happens to be, it's an interesting thing, but in the kollel where I learn in the mornings, there is no cell service. So if I want to make a phone call, or if Rookie needs me to call her, I need to go either to the parking lot or sometimes I even need to drive to like one of the neighboring shopping centers. So yeah, so I'm in the kollel and I'm learning over there, and Rookie texts me. She went for regular ultrasound. She texts me, you need to call me immediately. And as many of us who've been through infertility know, when you're going for an appointment to confirm pregnancy and your wife needs you to call her, there's only one thing you assume. You assume that obviously something happened. This is not going to be the pregnancy we've been waiting for.
Right.
So I texted her. I said, I can't call you for a few minutes. Please just promise me that everything's okay. And I'll never forget, she sends me back a picture, baby A and baby B.
Oh my gosh.
And the point was that, yes, our doctor had insisted on only transferring one embryo, but it had split and we ended up having two identical twins.
Oh my goodness.
And the amazing thing is that so often, especially in this field where the doctors are so much in control of everything that's happening, we sometimes lose sight of the fact of who's really in control. And sometimes we get that amazing moment where Hashem says to us, listen, that doctor might think you're only having one. If I want you to have two, he can't stop that. Put in one and a split, and Baruch Hashem, we have identical twin boys.
Wow. Wow. I have chills. Wow. Okay. So, I mean, that's an incredible story. I mean, and that would be enough for you to be, just personally through your work and, through your community, being open about your story, which it seems like you are, and speaking to local community members and other people in your network and talking about that and sharing. What led you to want to write this book?
Good question. So first of all, here is the book. If anyone hasn't seen it, this is the book in it together. And the main reason I wrote it is that obviously we know that as people go through a struggle like this, there are different styles of processing trauma or whatever you want to call it. So one very blatant example in our marriage was that I wanted to read about every single detail relevant to the topic. I wanted to know everything going on, every possible outcome, how it's going to play out, what would be the next step. We probably own 15 books on the subject. It happens to be there are very few books on the subject in the general world. And I probably read I definitely read all of them. And my wife, Rookie, did not want to know anything that was going on. She would go into the appointment. She's like, I don't even want to know how many injections, what you're doing, just do what you have to do. And that's it. So as I was on this sort of information gathering journey, I realized that there's really a scarcity of reading material that has the Torah values that is based in Judaism. In fact, there was only one book I found that was written by frum authors called The Third Key. And for anyone who's read that, it is exceptionally technical. It's like 700 pages long. It's really, really long. And it's very technical. There's full chapters on the makeup of medications and the dosages. And I'm sure as a doctor, you probably actually would love the book. But for me, who was looking for as much information as possible, even for me, it was like, this is a little bit too dense. So when we actually got to the point where we had this incredible moment where we looked at it almost like Hashem was showing us, like, I want to show you this journey can be used positively, I decided I'm going to write the book that I wish I had when we were going through the struggle. So all the information that I thought was relevant for people going through it, all the information relevant for the people that are close to the people going through it. And the third circle is all the people in the community that are interacting with those people who are going through it. So it's a combination really of information, general advice, both for people going through it and people associated with people going through it, either family or community. And then the general storyline of what we went through so that people can get that message, that global message at the end that we don't know how things are going to work out. Everything is so painful in this process. But we have to remember that there is an outcome that Hashem has for us. Not every outcome is going to be the same, but we have to try to remember that it's going to be what's best for each individual couple.
Right. And not every outcome, has the miraculous outcome that yours did.
Correct. We know very few people who have identical twins.
Right. I mean, I'm still like reeling from that. So so who is your, I mean, I know what the intentions are. I mean, you just described who the intended audience is, who you wrote the book for. How do you, is this for, is this for the couple who is even thinking about IVF or thinking about fertility treatments and they're not sure how to even like figure out whether this is something for them, like that they want to read about it from the Torah perspective? Is it for them, or is it really more that you're already in it, you already know you're doing it and sort of like in the weeds and, here's the situation?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's not so much the Torah perspective, but it was written by someone who is from and therefore has some of the sensitivities that people in the from community would appreciate. So opening up a secular book on the topic is going to, there's no way around it, is going to contain a certain style of writing, which is not going to have a sensitivity towards the fact that the from community appreciates sensitivity about matters that are not something that is generally table talk, for lack of a better term. So it's not so much the perspective, it's more just that it has that sensitivity. To answer your question though, yes, I think it's for anyone in that boat. So one of the other things that's unique about the vantage point that I have is that it's not just my story. I have a community of tons of couples. And in addition to that, eventually through the process of meeting other couples, starting to share my story, telling people that I'm writing a book, people started to contact me really from around the country and seeing what impacts people, how people process things, the different types of diagnosis and how they play out in relationships and in the medical field was something that allowed me to be able to share a much broader picture than just our specific journey. So yes, it's really for anyone so specifically people who are trying to have children. Yes, even someone who is not sure yet if they're going to be going through it, it'll explain some of the basics of what the process is so that a person can look into it and say, you know what, maybe this is not for me to do right now. But at least now I have the information to know, instead of us and most people until that book, it was sort of like, we want to have children. The only option is going to this clinic. I have no idea what they're going to do, but we don't have a choice.
Right.
So this sort of, one of the goals of this book is to allow people to have more information so that they can make the decision that's best for them.
Perfect. And then I'm curious whether you got any pushback from the community, from your, the people who you look to for your own personal advisors, other rabbeim, people who are poseks in different, in this space. Did you get any pushback about wanting to write a book like this? Or once you got the permission, so to speak, like what kind of language you could use, what kind of topics you could address? Talk to me about that process a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that the answer of that really took about 2 years to figure all those details out. So
okay,
yes,
so you have about 30 seconds. No, I'm kidding. You can have a little bit more. Go ahead.
I might need in between 30 seconds and 2 years.
Exactly.
So the first question we had to figure out was that, okay, it's great to give out this information to people. Do we want to do it with our names on it? Because at the end of the day, the goal of spreading information can happen with anyone's name. I could have written any pen name and the information would have been disseminated throughout the communities.
Right.
So originally when I spoke to my Rabbi Yosef Shapiro in Yerushalayim, he was a little hesitant about that. But we did go back and forth. Maybe we shouldn't do it. But obviously the flip side is that if I write my name, number one, it helps people realize the message of the book of In It Together. That now anyone who's going through it, who, like I assume, similar to us, assumes no one else is going through it, they see, you know what? There's a book, there's actually a person, there's a couple that we can see, and they've been through it. So that was obviously the factor of this decision. Do we want to break that stigma or work on breaking that stigma and allowing people to maybe be a little more comfortable talking about what they're going through, or at least feeling like they're with others? Or do we say, you know what, that's nice, but that's a little risky, that we're putting ourselves out there. It puts us into a little bit of a vulnerable situation.
Right, but there wasn't a reluctance to even start delving into the topic or begin to
So
write a
at
book.
that, not at that point.
Right.
So at that point, that was a debate. And I spoke to Rabbi Elon Feldman, who's the Rav of the main shul here in Atlanta, for a long time. And ultimately, Rabbi Elon Feldman felt pretty strongly that there would be no harm that would befall our family from the fact that people would know we had been through IVF. So I went back and forth with my Rebbe, and we decided to keep my name. Now, subsequent to that, there was a lot of interesting pushback. But fortunately, the first few Gedolim who I reached out to for Askamas all gave the Askamas. So by the time I started getting pushback, I had enough, I wouldn't say confidence, because it really wasn't me. It was more, had enough backing that I wasn't turned off by that. So yes,
and what were the issues that people brought up?
So the most striking one was one big gadol, who I'm obviously not belittling in any way, said, I can't write Askama. I don't think you were allowed to go through IVF if you already had a child. So obviously that was a little difficult to hear, but at the same time, we all know that there are different big poskim that have different opinions. And we had spoken to the people who we rely on, and they were the ones who had guided us through the journey and the specific process we had chosen. And then most of it had to do with similar types of things like that. So I approached different big organizations and wanted to know if they wanted to sponsor the whole thing, the writing of the book, and they would take all the profits. I definitely did not do this for the money. This was something that my wife and I felt passionate about, helping people going through the struggle. And a few times we had similar types of responses where there were poskim who would say that we can't do necessarily IVF, or maybe that if you already have a child, you can't. And a lot of it was more in the Hasidic world, which obviously is a large portion of the Frum world. But that was really the extent of it. I don't know if it would have sort of derailed my plans had it happened before I had a few askamas from some of the biggest gedolim in the world. But fortunately, it didn't get to that point. But that whole process, though, we talk about it in a few minutes. This took months to sort of plan and balance and figure out how to do it in the way that was most sensitive. And then Rabbi Shmuel first, who I'm very close with in Chicago, ultimately read through the entire manuscript and actually had me change things. So changed words. Sometimes it was words that was a lack of sneas or a lack of sensitivity, or maybe bordered on a halachic discussion, which this book is not. This book is not a halachic book. It is a storyline. It is an encouragement, advice. It is not a halachic book by any means. So yes, and my Rebbe also went through it to make sure that it was something that was sneas. And yeah, there were parts that had to be removed. There were parts that were added. There were parts that were removed and put back in. It was a lot of a juggle, because yes, we wanted to get across a very important message, but we also did not want to be doing anything that was a breach of sneas and sensitivity to the ideals that the Frum world strives for.
Right. And what is your intention? Like, you and I talked offline, and we talked about this idea that, your goal is for every person in the Frum world, who's comfortable having a book like this and reading a book like this, for every person in the Frum world to have this and to be able to access it, because it has that section for those people who are not struggling themselves, but want to be sensitive and support. So what's your intention in terms of how to get this message out to people, how to impress upon people that this is important, and for them to, take notice and to really read something that's, not necessarily pleasure reading, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't necessarily have an answer, but I'll tell you what we're planning. So first of all, I just want to add one other component. It's not just that people who are not going through it will be able to read the parts of how to support people, but a lot of people who have never been through this struggle have no clue what this world is like. So I'll give you a great example. I think I mentioned in the book, at some point I was talking to one of my closest friends, and I was telling him what we were going through. And he said, I'm so sorry. And I said, I appreciate that. Can I just ask you, what do you think it means when I tell you that we have been through an IVF retrieval? And he said, well, I heard it's like a few $1,000s and like you have to take a lot of pills. And I said to him, I said, we've spent, I don't know, remember that point. In the end, we spent over $30,000 thing. And I mean, not complaining, we're very happy with the outcome, but we spent tens of thousands of dollars, not like a few thousands. And we have buckets of used injections. I mean, literally buckets. I don't know why we still have them. Maybe to something that we don't want to let go of. I don't know why, but we literally buckets of injections. So when a person hears that their friend is going through infertility and they think it's a few $1,000s and some pills, you're not going to think that much about, should I be there for them? Do they need me? We all have our things that cost a few, your air conditioning breaks that cost a few $1,000s and you get fever, you need to take pills. But when a person reads this, and it's actually interesting, the last time we spoke was a few weeks ago. Since then, many more people have read it. A lot of people have given me feedback that they could never have imagined how difficult it was to have gone through IVF. Because when a person reads the book and sees some of the details about tens of thousands of dollars, the stress that it causes in a relationship, the fact that it has so many injections and so much unknown, so many moments of just up and down in this emotional turmoil, they inherently become more sensitive now when they're around that person that they know who's going through it. So it's more than just the chapters about how to be supportive. It's just generally, they don't even know what it is.
Right.
But the other answer is that I'm really hoping that I'm going to be able to spread the word with friends. We're telling all the friends we know who have some presence on social media. Obviously, if anyone in your audience has any ideas, I'm open to ideas. One of my friends, I'm very grateful for him. He is flying me out to his community in Houston to speak, which hopefully will raise awareness, because obviously, as we both know, the majority of people that come will probably be just people who are curious to hear what the speaker is saying. The people who are going through it, unfortunately, may be too uncomfortable to actually attend something like that. But through these types of events and through spreading the word with friends and trying to do as many talks with people such as yourself who are really on the forefront of this world of supporting those in need, I'm hoping that it will get the message out to really the broader community so that everyone can hopefully be more aware and more sensitive to what their friends and acquaintances are really going through.
Amazing. Look, I mean, that's the essence of the work that we do as well. We very much spend, all of our focus on trying to reach the people who are struggling, and also what I call the onion layer. Like, you just peel back the layers of, it's this person and that person and that person. Everyone else has some relation to the person who is struggling. And you're 1,000% right. I love the example that you just gave of, like, a couple of pills and, a few $1,000s. Like, people just really don't know. And so this book is a real compliment to the work that we ourselves are doing, but also, the rest of the Jewish fertility organizations. Like, we can do only so much, but it's nice for people to have something in their hands that they can tangibly look at, and they can go through over and over again to have something in their homes. So we are thrilled to, have this discussion with you and to promote your book and have people know more about it. So, lastly, tell people where they can find it. So the book is called In It Together.
In It Together.
Where can they grab it?
And it is available through Feldheim. So Feldheim is distributing. So it's available on their website, and it should be in local stores it just was what went out online a few days ago, but they said they're starting to ship to stores locally and around the world. So it should be available in all main bookstores. Obviously, we knew from the start that we assumed the overwhelming majority of sales of a book like this will be online, just because it's a safer space to order it for someone who is sensitive about this topic and the fact that they're struggling with it. It helps that they can just order it online, come straight to their door. No one knows that they're reading it, and they can still gain from the benefits.
Right. perfect. Look, yeah, I mean, you have to meet people where they are. And as you know,
Right.
we've talked about before, in this world where people are so, you know, they're scared and they're private. Many of them are private, especially in our community. And so we, you know, we have to meet them where they are and give them support where they are. So that's, I love that marketing outlook and the thought behind it. I think it's absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
Okay, Rabbi Shapiro, thank you so much for being here. We're honored to have you. You know, what we always like to say to people is, you know, we don't ever say like, now you know why you had to go through this entire journey because you had to write a book to now distribute to the Jewish community. We never say things like that because, you know, we don't, as mere, you know, mortals, as human beings, we don't have any idea what Hashem is thinking up there, and we don't know what his plans were and are going to be. What we know is that each of us are given different challenges, and each of us have the capacity to do something with that, sometimes small, sometimes a little bit bigger. And we're grateful for your contribution to this space. So thank you.
Thank you. And obviously, if anyone has any questions or comments, both my wife and I are comfortable sharing anything or talking or helping people. Anything we can do to help, we are happy to do.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, all right. Thank you so much. We will have the link for the In It Together book in the notes for this talk so that people can just link out and grab it. Okay, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.